Growing up, I used to think life was pretty simple and followed a reasonably predictable plan. You know, you start work sometime in your early 20s, work for about 40, I don't know, maybe 50 years, and then you retire. But as most of us know, and if you haven't learned already, life really isn't predictable at all. And it's usually not until we have some really life altering experiences of our own that we come to realize this. Well, hello and welcome to this first video of my channel. My name is Lee. I'm a middle-aged guy. I just turned 49 actually, just a few days ago. Happy birthday, me. And I've started this channel because I really wanted to share my thoughts and ideas and ultimately my journey towards what I'm calling a life with more options and control. I'm a pretty regular type of guy. I'm married, we don't have children, and I live in New Zealand. In this video, I want to talk about some of the goals and ideas that I've chosen, that I'm working towards, and why I've chosen these ideas. Ultimately, I've come to realize that this notion, call it what you will, that you'll spend 40 or so years working and then retire roughly in your mid to late 60s. I don't think that's going to be viable for me, and I know that's probably not viable for a lot of people out there as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what has changed my mind on this and made me explore options for some alternatives to this. So for me, a big turning point was almost 10 years ago, actually 9 years ago now. It was in 2017. Actually, I just turned 40. And so at the time, around that age, you turn 40, you do start to be a little bit more, I don't know, you're thinking a lot more about your long-term future. You start to realize that, you're not going to live forever. And also, your health isn't guaranteed either. And I found myself, probably like many other people, just taking things like long-term savings and investing a lot more seriously. The year started off with me actually getting married inside the first quarter of the year. And also, a few months after getting married, sadly, my mum passed away. And, that was the real wake-up call for me. And I'm sure it is for a lot of people, really. The death of a very close loved one, especially a parent, is a very, very sobering thing. And it also really makes you consider long and hard what life is all about and what you're going to do with the rest of your life as well. I want to tell you a little bit about my mum's situation specifically because it was a very big factor, not just the fact that she passed away, it's how and when she passed away that really affected my long-term thinking. My mum was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease quite young, really. She was in her late 40s. That's actually my age now. And that's, sometimes I do think about that. Let's just say, long story short, the last few years of her life were quite difficult. It had reached an advanced stage where she couldn't move easily. She lost a lot of mobility. And back in 2017, I get a phone call from one of her friends who I didn't know very well, saying that she's had a fall and broken her arm and was in hospital. And you'd think that breaking your arm wouldn't be so serious, but it created this sort of downward spiral where I think it was caused by it. She wasn't able to get immediate access to her medication that she was taking. And that caused her to go into some sort of strange state. It wasn't a coma or anything like that, but it took a week or so for her to come round, and she was on like a ventilator. She had to have assisted breathing, all that sort of thing. So it really, really weakened her. And I was living in Japan at the time, and I just packed a bag immediately and jumped on the first flight that was available. No joke, about a week before all of this happened, I had actually flown from Japan to New Zealand to celebrate her 61st birthday. It was a surprise, and looking back on it, it was so well timed that I didn't tell her I was coming. I just turned up, and she was super happy. I could only stay for a few days, and that really bummed me out, but it was better than nothing. But it's just so weird how literally days later after I got back from that trip, that quick trip to New Zealand, I get this phone call. Long story short, she, after, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks, she eventually passes away. And after, the initial, or the worst phase of the grieving process, I'd say the first sort of 3 to 6 months, after that sort of dust settles a little bit, I was able to think about things a lot more clearly. And, it dawned on me that she was only 61. And as I said previously, turning 40 that year, you start thinking about like, okay, I guess I got to be a bit more serious about things like retirement. That's a reality. And I'd learned a lot about things like pension ages, stuff like that. Like, when do I qualify for a pension in my home country of New Zealand? And it turns out it's age 65. She died at age 61 and she didn't reach retirement age. She never got to draw down that pension. And that really stuck in my thoughts. It made me realize that life's not guaranteed. It's all well and good to have all these nice laws and legislature, however you say it, saying that, you get this age, you'll get this and that, and a pension, blah, blah, blah. What if you just don't get to that age? Some of us don't. A lot of us don't. So that made me think. It planted that seed in my mind. But I got back to work and stuff, but that seed was there. Ultimately, I'm saying that life doesn't stick to a nice, neat little plan. It changes very quickly. So you need to be adaptable. We need to be adaptable. And that's what I'm really, really interested in these days, is exploring that adaptability. I've said the word options quite a few times. That's because I'm not saying I definitively want to, retire next year and cut off all work, never work again. No, that's not where I'm at. I just want to create options for myself and my wife. And speaking of my wife, that was the other thing. After a few years of married life, I started to notice the things that truly make me happy, and hopefully make my wife happy as well, although I can't speak for her. But at least I noticed I was the happiest when we could just hang out together and preferably travel. So it got me thinking more and more, why not create a life where we're able to do that as soon as possible? It's at this point, I do think it's very, very important to say that what I'm talking about here is not necessarily about I've got to quit work as quickly as possible. I don't want to work anymore. I hate work, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. Over the years, I've watched lots of YouTubers talk about escape the 9 to 5, get out of the rat race, etc., etc. It appeals to our most base senses, doesn't it? Like, just live a life of freedom. That's cool, but I don't think that's necessarily coming from a great place. For me, right now, I actually enjoy my working life. I am fortunate enough to work in a job that I find very satisfying. It's very creative. I work with really good, supportive people, and I really like it. But what I've realized is that nothing lasts forever. Your job's never guaranteed. I've seen things like cutbacks happen throughout my working life. I've seen redundancies. I've seen people made redundant. I've been made redundant once, and I've worked in situations that became untenable and I had to leave. Again, it's good to create more options for yourselves, more possibilities in case things like you do lose your job or you find yourself not being able to work. Another idea or concept that I do want to explore a lot more in this channel is the idea of control. In recent years, I've become a lot more aware of only focusing on things that you can control. In the example of work that I just gave, things like financial cutbacks or closures or redundancies, the long-term direction of a company or organization where you work, I have no control over that. But What I can control are things like finances, my personal finances. Your finances and your spending are probably the most defining tool when it comes to things like retirement. So I'll try to share with you along this whole journey thoughts and ideas about finances, saving, investing, controlling your spending, that sort of thing. Because ultimately, your retirement is going to cost money, and that's going to require good disciplined savings and investing. So over the years, I've built these investing tools and vehicles, whatever you want to call them, to help me reach these goals or options, whatever you want to call them, a little bit faster. How I'm investing, what I'm investing in, hopefully getting some ideas of other people as well, if they can contribute, of what they think I could be doing more to help build that net worth. And finally, I want to talk about one other thing, another potential tool that I've become very, very interested in I'd say the last 18 months or so. It's called geo-arbitrage. What is that? It's basically just a big fancy name for go somewhere cheaper. I spent a huge chunk of my life living outside my home country. My home country is New Zealand, but I spent 20 years living in Asia. I spent a year living in Korea when I was really young, when I graduated uni. And then I spent 19 years living in Japan, where I met my wife. Now, we're back in New Zealand now, and we've been here for about 4 years. And, you know, it's going okay, but we've also come to the realization that perhaps we're not the type of people who really want to stay cemented down to one place for a very long time. So both of us have become more and more keen on this possibility of moving somewhere else that's preferably a lot cheaper, because as you'll know, living in a modern Western country like the one I'm in now, New Zealand, it's expensive. And the thought of retiring here scares me, to be honest. I don't think staying here in New Zealand is going to be financially viable, really. And as I just touched on as well, I think I'm okay with that because I'm quite used to traveling around. So my wife and I, we've been looking at that recently. Geo-arbitrage, basically the concept of just moving somewhere where it's cheaper. Where are we going to move to? Well, I think that's a topic all in itself. And I'll save that for the next video, actually. So in the next video, I'll talk a bit more about this concept of moving somewhere else where it's cheaper, where we could possibly go, how long could we possibly go there for, all those types of things. So if you're interested in that as well, I want to talk about that a little bit more in the next video. So hopefully I'll see you in that video. And yeah, I really want to say thanks for watching this. If you have watched it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas about what I've been talking about, that whole concept of creating options for yourself, getting to a stage in your life where you can exercise a lot more control over your life. And yeah, just having the option to do what you want when you want. All right, thanks for watching.